Hello, and thank you for joining us today. My name is Timothy Lee, and I'm a research analyst at Red Cloud Securities, and I'm delighted to host this Red Cloud webinar on silver exploration today. With the silver price up over $30 an ounce, this is an exciting time to invest in this space. My special guest today is Lauren Megaw, Head of Investor Relations for Reyna Silver. During today's webinar, Lauren will provide an overview of the company's achievements and the outlook for exploration plans coming up. Then we will take questions. You can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We will get to as many as we can. Before we kick things off, let's discuss the fine print. During this Reyna Silver webinar, forward-looking statements may be made. I would direct listeners to the company's forward-looking statements disclosure outlined on page 2 of the Reyna corporate presentation, and this can be found on the company's website, reynasilver.com. For Red Cloud Securities, Inc., I would highlight that this webinar is for information purposes only. It should not be considered a solicitation or recommendation to buy or sell securities. We note that this call does not consider the particular situation or needs of individual investors. Participants should rely on their own investigation and seek their own professional advice before investing. Please see our most recent research located on the Red Cloud website for specific disclosures pertaining to Reyna. And now I'm delighted to introduce Lauren Megaw, who will present the Reyna story, as the company's name suggests. Reyna is primarily focused on silver exploration, although really it's polymetallic here. Silver rarely occurs alone, but there are other metals involved that may be targeted here. The company has 4 projects, 2 in Mexico, 2 in Nevada. What's quite interesting, 3 of the company's projects are prospective for carbonate replacement deposits, or CRD, which the company has a fair amount of expertise on its technical team with these types of projects. The 4th actually has unusually high-grade native silver with additional gold. The company has recently consolidated ownership of their Griffin project in Nevada, which is currently their primary focus. Now I'd like to turn it over to Lauren to update you on the company.
All right. Thank you so much, Tim. And look forward to speaking to everyone. I see some familiar names there, and I'm going to launch on into the Reyna Silver story. Reyna Silver's focus is on high-grade, big-scale projects. That's the kind of thing that moves the needle. And exploration is hard enough. Pursue what's going to matter. And those are the type of deposits where your silver grade's high enough that you can make money when silver's in the tank, and simultaneously is big enough that you can survive multiple market cycles. You have the type of deposit that someone would actually want to turn into the mine, whether it's you or a major company, one of the big boys. I mean, that's the style of deposit that they're looking for. And that's the filter we use, and simultaneously, that's what our team has been successful at discovering previously. I'm going to be making forward-looking statements. We're a junior company. We're excited about our projects, but it's important to do your research, your homework on this or any investment. We have 4 projects that fit through our high-quality, big-scale filter. We have an exploration team that's been serially successful, and it's not just that the lead technical advisor is my father, Dr. Peter Megaw, the co-founder of Megaw Silver, but it's also the team that's boots on the ground, running the programs, who have been part of those major discoveries. In some ways, the boys are, back at it. And on top of that, with our CEO's depth of his Rolodex, as it were, we've been able to put together a strong, balanced investor register. Which has allowed us to have access to capital, which has allowed us to move forward with some exploration successes so far. Hopefully we can make a big discovery. As mentioned earlier, we just completed a merger between Reyna Silver and Reyna Gold, and I'd like to say thank you to Reyna Gold shareholders who are now part of Reyna Silver, and for all the consolidated shareholders for being supportive of this move. This brings not only a streamlined company together, but it also brings all of the potential for Griffin, where we're currently drilling under one umbrella, which we feel really is in the best interest of the shareholders. That brings our issued and outstanding shares to over 222 million. And given the recent price, that puts us at a market cap of about 36 million Canadian. We're doing an average daily volume of 260,000. The end of June, we had 3.6 million Canadian in the bank, though we've since been drilling, so the number will be less than that when we put out the next financial statement. We have coverage from Tim Lee. Feel free to reach out to him to receive that, as well as 8 Capital's Felix. Major shareholders, we have 2 groups out of Sprott. We have Commodity Discovery, Ingalls & Snyder, L1, Regal, Wartaw. We really appreciate their continued support. If anyone has additional questions on this, happy to go through it. But reminder, my expertise is more on the geology side. So take pity on me a little bit on some of these questions. I'll do my best. As I mentioned earlier, we have a strong team on the geology, including Rene Ramirez and Manuel Ruiz. In addition, we also have a chairman of Peter Jones. He's the former CEO of Hud Bay Minerals. And between that and our CEO, Jorge Ramiro Monroy, we've been able to put together a strategic team. Jorge is originally from Mexico. He lives in Hong Kong, regularly traveling to North America to be able to meet with shareholders. This does give us special access to shareholders out of Southeast Asia Pacific, and it's the reason why about 30 to 40% of our shareholders are from that region, which is, it's a different group of investors from the majority of our peers, which has given us special access to capital through that avenue. One of the other things I would mention is Jorge is strongly aligned with shareholders. He has over 11 million shares in Reyna Silver. He's participated in every financing that he can, and regularly backs. This is someone who has true skin in the game, which is what people regularly say. But he carried this company. He's the one that had the vision, bring the team together, and make sure that the group that has been so successful previously have the tools to potentially be successful again. So where are we looking? We've got 4 projects, 2 in Mexico, 2 in Nevada. The 2 Mexican assets originated with Mag Silver, and we're the victims of that team's success at Juanicipio, which is now one of, if not the largest, highest grade primary silver producers in the world. And when you look at that kind of track record and you look at the kind of deposits where initially it was a toss-up of what everyone's favorite was, we're excited to have those 2. Since going public, we've acquired the 2 assets in Nevada. A stool is more stable with 4 legs than it is with 2. And additionally, we recognized an opportunity in Nevada to take the team's expertise in carbonate replacement deposits, which 3 of our projects are, from Mexico, and look at Nevada from a new lens with strength in exploring for those deposits. I'll go more into CRDs in a bit. What they really boil down to is these are high-grade, big systems. They're polymetallic, but you get good recovery rates out of most of the metals that come out of it. You get critical metals too, high margin, all the fun things that we like. One of the other pieces that we have with Reyna Silver is the Batapilas project. I will be talking about this one in a little bit more detail as well, especially with its relationship to the style of mineralization that we see at Griffin, or exploration techniques that we see at Griffin. So Batapilas is historically a native silver district. That means that the main ore mineral there was actually nearly sterling silver, crazy high grades. The system was thought to be just a silver system. So here we are, the silver exploration company, and we say, how much bigger is this project? We're not looking for the little piece that was left behind. We're looking for the next big deposit. So we stepped out over a kilometer from that historic area, and that's where we started finding gold. And we recognized that the gold mineralization and the silver mineralization were using the same structures, which provided the opportunity. They're different mineralized events, but same structures. That provided the opportunity for us to leverage one against the other. And that led us to, in last year's drill program, not only having our widest intercept to date, but we also latched into the beginning of what we think could be another one of the famous ore shoots of Badapilas. And we're really looking forward to sentiment towards Mexico shifting and hopefully providing an opportunity to finally follow up on these amazing targets we've put together there. The other three projects are carbonate replacement deposits. As I mentioned earlier, we have Gigi, which is the missing half of one of the world's largest CRDs, the Santo Eulalia mining district. We have Medicine Springs, where we think the full system is contained within this 6,500 hectare project. And then last year, the opportunity to acquire Griffin became available. Griffin is now over 12,000 hectares, making it one of, if not the largest consolidated land package on the Carlin Trend. And what makes Griffin exciting is it's gold, silver, and critical metals all in the same project. And we believe that, like with Badapilas, we can leverage the silver mineralization to better understand the gold mineralization and vice versa. Look forward to introducing you or explaining that in more detail here next. So, next steps, catalysts for Reyna. What are we going to be getting up to? So, coming up soon, we should have results from the current 2024 drill program at Griffin. Can't wait to bring those to you guys and share what we've been up to there. Then the next step for us will be preparing the 2025 drill program at Griffin. Looking forward to next year with follow-up. And another component that has come up recently is a shift in sentiment towards Mexico, which might provide the opportunity for us to do a drill program at Badapilas, follow up those amazing targets. And the other aspect is it looks like the market's shifting. And with that, possibilities open up. And, you know, one of the things that makes the combination of something like the Mexican assets and the Nevada assets that Reyna Silver has is Nevada has this thing called snow, which means that drilling during the winter can become more costly. Mexico doesn't have that, which provides the opportunity to have offset drilling programs, increase news flow, and potentially get double re-rating in a year. So look forward to seeing what comes out of that. One of the things that we're currently doing is the 2024 drill program at Griffin. Drilling is underway currently. And to dive into Griffin, it's gold, it's silver, it's critical metals. We now have the full optionality to earn into 70% on this asset. And it's an example of when the opportunity to acquire one of these exploration projects presents itself. You seize it, and that's what we've done. And it's got an amazing address. So you look at this part of Nevada, it's most famous for its gold deposits. You've got the two big gold megatrends, the Carlin Trend and the Battle Mountain Eureka Trend. This is home to gold mega districts. And you know, you've got the North Carlin camp with 120 million ounces of gold. You have Cortez with 50 million ounces of gold. And between that and the fact that the project is got gold absolutely everywhere, high-grade gold up to 25 grams, regularly occurring gram gold in samples at surface. Agnico's drill program here, 9 out of 12 holes, intersected gold mineralization. But figuring out how to unlock this true Carlin type gold system has been the big question here. The focus has been just on the shallow mineralization, and we recognized an opportunity. And this goes back to 25 years ago when the geological team, that's the underlying vendors, brought my father out to look at how do you separate the CRD mineralization from the Carlin mineralization, in large part so that you can kind of ignore the CRD mineralization and focus just on the Carlin. And it turns out that that was probably one of his biggest mistakes, was helping with that. In that we now recognize that it appears both styles of mineralization were using the same structures. So you can see those lines highlighted in both. And it's a strong CRD system. I mean, two of the historically producing mines in this area were CRDs. The Mineral Hill claims on the western side, that was one of the first, if not the first, CRD discovered in this area. Super high grade mineralization. You put those pieces together and you go, how can we leverage this? Particularly, because if you go back into the old literature, Ralph Roberts, guy who found one of the big movers in Carlin, the OG as it were, he defined the Carlin trend and the Battle Mountain Eureka trend using silver deposits before these big gold deposits really made a breakthrough. And when you look at a map and you take those silver deposits and you layer them over the gold deposits, you see that there is at least an association. We don't fully understand what the relationship is yet, but if it was one or two, you'd say it's a coincidence. When you're talking 20 plus, okay, now this is something that needs to be paid attention to, especially when you look at the relationship between the two styles of mineralization that we see down in Ruby Hill in the Eureka district, or Cortez being Cortez. I mean, that's a 50 million ounce gold camp that has known CRD mineralization, or Railroad, or Emigrant Rain, and you put those pieces together, and we recognize the opportunity to bring up one of the best CRD exploration teams in the world to Nevada, and look at this system from a new angle. So, and I realize some of you have heard this before, so my apologies. But for those of you who aren't, I would love to introduce you to carbonate replacement deposits. These are continuous zoned polymetallic systems. So you get silver and lead and zinc and copper and gold with good recovery rates. So you can have your cake and eat it too. These things are the result of a source intrusion. Typically, that's a porphyry. What you normally associate with copper and gold mineralization, they don't have to be an economically productive porphyry to be able to make a big CRD. You look at the Taylor Hermosa deposit in Arizona, which South 32 bought for $1.6 billion. That is attached to a porphyry that's not exciting, but that deposit that's attached to that definitely is. How these work is you have that porphyry there in pink. Coming off of that is acidic mineralized fluid that's laden with a bunch of metals. When it goes through fractures, essentially like plumbing and structures in the rock, you end up, when it comes into contact with the carbonate, you get an acid-base reaction and the metals drop out. Similar reaction type to, actually same reaction type as if you were putting baking soda and vinegar together in one of those paper mache volcanoes. So it's creating its own porosity. This happens again and again. And that's what makes these deposits big, high grade, and large crystal size. Another way to think about it, and how I like to wrap my head around it, is like these things are public transportation systems. So that source, that porphyry, that's your bus terminal. Coming off of that, your acidic mineralized fluid, those are your buses. Your structures, those are your bus routes, your big boulevards, your thoroughfares. And when the bus leaves the terminal, hopefully fully loaded with metals, different metals end up getting off in different neighborhoods. So when you are close to your bus terminal and you're downtown, Geologists call that the skarn. You're going to have higher copper, gold, zinc mineralization. Silver grades are going to be lower than they are outboard, but this is where everything's voluminous. As you make your way further out into the system, you get to the suburbs. We call those the massive sulfide chimney manto systems. Typically what's associated with the CRDs, these are really high grade silver, lead, zinc systems, critical metals as well. They come off in sort of these hub and spokes, or almost like finger-like or hand-like ore bodies. They can be massive. In the case of the Santa Eulalia district, where our Gigi project is, in one of the chimneys, you could fit 2 Eiffel Towers stacked on top of each other comfortably. Really big systems. One of the questions in these deposits is figuring out how to hone in on most important mineralization. If your deposit was New York, do you want to be focusing on the Bronx, or do you want to be focusing on Connecticut and not getting too focused too early on and really get a sense of the scale of the system? And, the other aspect with these is we have to look at them now as like a continuum. So historically, we have defined deposits based off of what they've cropped out surface. So that's a CRD or a skarn or a porphyry. And yet these things are part of a continuum. They're attached to one another. These systems are continuous at the time of mineralization. And it means that you can look at a deposit where, the porphyry is probably not going to be great, but maybe the CRD is going to be great, or vice versa. Or in some cases, like with Bingham Canyon, you get the full spectrum. Those are the ones that get really exciting. And then you have something like Griffin. So going back to that public transportation analogy, if you think of the CRD mineralization as being those, big buses, right? That's a more aggressive, more dramatic style of mineralization. Using your big boulevards, your big thoroughfares, your largest mineralization is going to happen where your traffic jams are. So that's going to be intersections, that's going to be interchanges. Carlin mineralization is like a bunch of little taxi cabs. I recognize that taxis are less popular nowadays, so maybe you want to think about them as Ubers, but they're yellow, so that's how my brain works. They're going to go along those big thoroughfares and then go everywhere from there. So one of the things that we recognized with Griffin is that we have these spectacular outcrops of CRD style mineralization that appear to beautifully highlight the major structures, and which potentially are the major routes for the mineralization, and use that more dramatic mineralization to begin to unlock not just the CRD mineralization, but also that Carlin mineralization. There was a bunch of good geologic work that was done here, sampling geophysics, drilling solely gold focused. And that allowed us to come in, look at it from a new angle with that CRD expertise, and hopefully begin to really unlock and then unleash this project. And what's come up is essentially 3 major styles of mineralization. So we've got the silver mineralization. We see over 2,000 grams silver in some areas, particularly in some undrilled target zones. We get gold samples that run up to 25 grams gold, as well as a copper component that's here as well. As I mentioned earlier, when you get closer to that source, your copper numbers go up. That's one of the reasons why we think there's potentially multiple mineralizing sources here. If you're looking at a big city like Manhattan or New York, right? You have multiple bus terminals, similar things in big deposits. And for instance, around our Saddler area, we get samples that are coming back up to almost 12% copper, as well as in that same zone, up to 1,300 grams silver. When you see that combination, especially in the style of mineralization we're seeing it, so those are fragments that are caught up in breccias, you put those pieces together and you go, the geology is literally sampling something at depth for us. We're beginning to try to unravel what that story is, look at what kind of additional geophysics we could do. We're looking forward to that for 2025 and drill targets at depth, going after these potential sources. They're important exploration vectors as well. The 007 zone really exemplifies the potential for the gold mineralization here. We know we have true Carlin type gold, but we also have these structures that are coming back 20, 25 grams gold. You're going to be looking for those intersections, following up on the successful drilling that's been done there previously, including Agnico's most successful drill hole, which was 007, and seeing where the next step is here. And then finally, but also, the top was Union. That is a target that's the first time CRD mineralization has been a drill target here at Griffin. We were able to acquire Union. We're the first group in modern exploration that's had this full project. There's no holes left in the project by acquiring Union as well as Mineral Hill. And that allows us to test the CRD potential here. Both looking whether or not we have the thickness of the carbonate block that we need for these systems to get big. Once again, we're not looking to waste our time on small things. And then in addition to that, begin to understand what the orientation and geometry of the CRD mineralization is. Union historically was mined to the base of oxidation because that's the processing capability at the time. And that leaves the deeper sulfides untouched. The big thing I would leave with you with Griffin before we jump to the next project is it's at least a triple threat. Whether you're talking the copper mineralization or the gold mineralization or the silver mineralization, each one of these could be significant deposits in their own right. The thing that makes Griffin particularly special is the potential, and I recognize this is a forward-looking statement, but the potential for all three, and making sure that we don't get too focused too early and miss bigger potential in the system, and getting that wide-scale framework exploration done between the 2024 and 2025 drill programs. So, as I mentioned earlier, soon we'll have the results out of Griffin. We typically put the full program out in a big batch, in context, with itself. We'll be working and preparing for the program next year. But one of the other pieces here is there's a shift in sentiment towards Mexico, which might allow us to finally drill some amazing targets at Batopilas. For those who aren't familiar with it yet, Batopilas is Mexico's highest grade silver district historically. That right there is 1 month's production, 350,000 ounces of fine silver. Not an exceptional month, it's when the photographer was there. The district in total produced over 300 million ounces of silver, an average diluted grade of over 1,500 grams. And, part of what makes us excited about Batopilas is you're in this place where the focus and the understanding was solely silver until a silver exploration company came in. And when they were in the ore chutes proper, the average grade was almost 2% silver. When you start talking about percentages of silver, it boggles the mind. And how this mineralization would work is you go from these tight structures that would be calcite with silver, and then over the course of 3 to 5 meters, they'd blow out. And you'd end up with the core of the thing being 0.5 meter to 2 meters wide, 30 to 80 meters on level, and hundreds of meters down. And that was almost like a Brillo pad of native silver. I mean, just crazy deposits, crazy grade. And on the way during that blowout, you would go through a series of sulfides. And, going from galena to sphalerite to acanthite. And we'll come back to the acanthite component here in just a minute, which is why I'm spending a little bit of time here. And one of the big questions at Bottipelis has been, you'd end up with these almost string of pearl ore shoots. So these subvertical ore shoots, and it would go from tight, blowout, tight, blowout. How do you find the next set of veins? Historically, what they did is they chased them from surface, then they built a tunnel, keep it in line and just follow multiple at the same time. But we're a modern exploration company. Mining has changed. How much bigger is this system? Because silver is a gregarious metal. As Tim mentioned, it wants to hang out with other elements. And as a result, how do you have a deposit that produced over 300 million ounces with the main ore mineral being just silver? That's hard to do. It suggests that it's a big deposit. So what we did is we did a bunch of sampling. We did trenching. We were getting back samples that were running up to 42 kilograms silver. And then we started getting some gold, which was interesting. We followed that up. We stepped out over 1.5 kilometers from the historic center of gravity of this district around the Porfirio Diaz tunnel. And we started finding gold. And yes, some of it was like 36-gram gold, tight structure. And then in hole 42A, we intersected over almost 4 meters of over 8 grams gold. You put that together and you say, whoa, we need to figure out how this fits into the overall context. And like Griffin, what we did and what we've now used actually at Griffin was the experience from Bottipelis is let's figure out the style of mineralization that presents differently at surface. What happens when we map that? We look at that from the gold perspective, because the gold and the silver are using the same structures. It means we can use the two against each other. And so like with Griffin, what we did, although opposite metal in this case, what we did was we went out and we looked at the structures. We ran new geophysics. We did a big sampling program and developed these targets. And we started seeing ones that were both undercover, as well as some that we felt were de-risked due to their location, similar to what we've been doing at Griffin. This is part of the reiterative process, learning from past experiences, and that's what allows you to make a major discovery. And so at Bottipelis, what we did is we had 2 big veins, the Escritorio and Todos los Santos, and we recognized through the work that there was the potential for a blind target in between those. And we tested that, and we hit 0.2 meters, grading over 6,400 grams silver. But what gets us excited about that drill hole is that the feature that you see there, the white, that's the historic native silver and calcite. But what's in between there, that black piece, that is acanthite as the matrix or the cement for a breccia. And this historically was one of the features that tells you you're getting into that 3 to 5 meters before a blowout into an ore chute. And it's a drill hole that we have wanted to properly follow up since we intersected it. And on top of that, one of the things that's exciting is there's that question, if mineralization didn't crop out on surface, does that mean it wasn't tapped into? It's the system to have the potential to be that much bigger. And at hole 58, just 3 meters from surface, we intersected 30 meters of silver mineralization with 9 meters over 600 grams. And it has been painful for the team to not follow up on these drill targets. They're important. We've been able to use what we learned here relative to Griffin. And, what it really comes down to is we think through this, Reyna Silver can have a catalyst-rich 2025. We'll see whether or not the markets change in such a way that we can drill both programs. Fingers crossed. We'll be planning for that 2025 drill program at Griffin. And of course, look forward to sharing drill results out of this year's program as well. I got through this a lot faster than I thought I was going to. That's what happens when you're excited and you talk too fast. If there's any questions, I'd be more than happy to answer.
Great. Thank you, Lauren, for the very informative presentation. We will now start the Q&A portion of the webinar. A reminder to everyone on the line that you can type your questions into the chat box at any time. We already do have a question or two. You had mentioned that the company is a fairly healthy cash position, but is the company looking for financing at this time? And if so, maybe an interesting part of this would be what kind of options would you look at? Would you, obviously raising equity is typical in this space, but would you look at taking on a royalty or a JV partner for projects?
Yeah, I mean, we're a junior company. We're looking to do some drill programs next year. We'll be going for a financing. The question will be the timing on that financing, making sure that we can make it strategic as possible. In terms of type of financing, equity is the most likely, especially because you look at something like Griffin. Which element do you pick for royalty? It could turn out that the strongest part of the system is gold, or it could turn out that it's silver, or it's copper. You don't want to hamstring yourself before you've made the major discovery and figure out what your byproduct is, because it's a triple threat, and the potential there means we have to be conservative on that. Debt is typically a really bad idea for juniors. It's how people get themselves into some extreme trouble. So that is something we will be doing our best to avoid. Joint venture is always a possibility, especially considering our address. For context, at Griffin, we are surrounded by Nevada gold mines. So that's Newmont, Barrick, Kinross is to our southeast, McEwen, Orla, Agnico. It goes and goes and goes. We know that we are on multiple big companies' radar. Between the exploration team's success, the size of the land package, the fact that it's consolidated, putting all those together, you've got to be excited for the potential there. We will do our best to not jump into that too quickly. It's important to, someone once put it to me recently at Beaver Creek, you want to be the single girl as long as you can, because once you put a ring on it, everyone thinks you're taken. So those are things that we will be keeping in mind moving forward, and look forward to, if any of you are interested for the next financing, when that comes up, please let us know.
Great. And shifting a little to the technical side, kind of following up here on the current drill program, what is primarily the target here that you've drilled, and will you plan to do some deeper holes to test the deeper potential there?
Yeah, right now, the initial holes, for instance, like with Union, which was the first time CRD mineralization was a target. It's also where we have good outcrop of carbonate, which is your magic host rock at the surface. So that one, for instance, was a deeper hole because we needed to see whether or not this thing had the potential to get big. So looking at that, the majority of the rest of the holes were more what I would call mid-depth, based off of the geology that we began to latch into. We had a big mapping program this summer. It was really fun. We brought in a guy who's been part of major work at Cortez and other Newmont assets, putting those pieces together and seeing what we can deliver with those. One of the things that's the trickiest for our team relative to working in Nevada and in a combination style deposit is CRD mineralization is dramatic. It looks like a disco ball. You can smell it from a distance, right? Like it hits you upside the face. Carlin mineralization is what we refer to as cryptic. You have some general ideas of what's going on. You can see some alteration types, but you don't know what kind of gold you may or may not have. So we are sitting there in as much anticipation as the investors, waiting to see what the results come out at, and really look forward to sharing that with everyone as well. Next year, we'll probably do some deeper drill holes. Following up on that copper mineralization, seeing if we can identify where the source is for these, important exploration vector. Also important in terms of one of the cool things about exploring in Nevada on CRDs is there is the potential, unlike probably most of the Mexican CRDs, there are potential with porphyries in this area for it being productive, whether it's gold or copper as well.
Great. Yeah, we did have one, I guess, following up on that. We had one question. Can you give an early indication for how many meters you'd like to drill at Griffin in 2025?
Oh, that's a tough question. Market dependent, results dependent. I would love to do a 5,000 meter program. I will work my best to make sure that's something we can fund. Obviously we'd like to go bigger if it turns out that the drill results support that. Depends on what we've potentially tapped into.
And obviously I mentioned like the drill targets at Batopilas, should sufficient funding become available, how quickly could you execute a drill program there? Are you pretty much able to very quickly, or do you have permitting hurdles that you need?
Essentially at Batopilas, we are ready to go. The team has been working on this, through the last year. We've kept that group, particularly Manuel Ruiz, who runs the Batopilas program, working and making sure that should things shift, we are poised and ready to go. It's an important part for a company like us, especially with multiple assets, to make sure that you have those arrows in the quiver and they're sharp and they're ready to succeed. And that's what we've done down at Batopilas. We can trigger a program there pretty rapidly as well.
Okay, great. And shifting back to Griffin, or maybe at Batopilas as well, looking at the geophysical tools, obviously with Griffin now you do have some drill holes there. Is there any downhole geophysics that would be useful to help guide further drilling?
So far, that hasn't been particularly successful relative to CRD mineralization. We have a lot of geophysics that were previously done here. We're looking into opportunities to leverage that relative to results from this year. Each one of the targets that we did at Griffin, for instance, are related to some kind of remote sensing. So Union, there's a geophysics anomaly over there. 007, there's a hyperspectral anomaly that goes for a couple kilometers there. Same with Saddler. There's a geophysics anomaly. There's actually multiple geophysics anomalies associated with that zone. So you put those pieces together, and depending on what the results come out this year, that will also indicate whether or not we need to do follow-up geophysics, or if we need to go for a bigger drill program to take advantage of a significant geophysics anomaly and see whether or not that's truly related to mineralization for a large scale. So doing that, hopefully applying some AI, whether or not you're talking Batopilas or Griffin, and looking to doing that strategically. Great.
And then stepping back a little company-wide here, obviously with 4 projects, do you have the resources to continue work on all, or obviously you have to choose priorities, and Zibla Griffin and Batopilas have risen to the top of the group.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard having 4 projects in that you kind of have to figure out who's going to be the favorite for this year. simultaneously it provides you with the opportunity to do something like what we're considering with Botapilus Griffin combination, or maybe we do a joint venture with one asset and keep, just on an asset level and keep fully with the others. These are pieces that we're looking at. The market turns, suddenly you're able to deploy multiple programs. But right now, Griffin is the star of the show because of its address, because of its potential. That's largely what's driving that. And then Botapilus, we just feel like we're so close to making a major breakthrough there. It seems practically criminal that we haven't been able to drill those targets. So hopefully we can bring those results to investors.
Great. And maybe a little bit of a follow-up. You did mention the shift in sentiment in Mexico after the election here. Can you give us a little more of your insights on that? And, obviously then that does maybe open the door, even though you'd be able to drill, but maybe gives a little more motivation to look at targets in the country.
Yeah, I mean, I think sentiment towards Mexico is shifting on the investors' part. There was concern that mining was going to end up on the first 100 days of Claudia Sheinbaum's term. It got taken off, which shows that it seems to be deprioritized in terms of, and on top of that, the mining minister and all of that are kind of who you would hope it to be relative to this lean in the government. So I think things are turning in a positive direction. It also helps that both of our projects would be underground. The big issues were relative to open pit, and you've also got the protection of NAFTA as well, relative to some of the other concerns. We'll see where things go. We are still keeping an eye on that. And if it looks like sentiment shifted for just a bit and goes back the other way, we'll have to take that into consideration. But we definitely want to drill that. I mean, it's also... drilling in Mexico is so much cheaper than drilling in Nevada. I mean, your all-in cost in Mexico is like $180 a meter. That's significantly different, and it also means that capital goes further. So hopefully all of the stars align and we're able to take advantage of that.
Great. Well, I think that's all the questions received, but maybe I'll just ask kind of a closer here. You've obviously mentioned what the plans are, but just to review, what are some key catalysts or what news might we look forward to from the company in the coming months?
The big news is going to be the results out of Griffin, putting those pieces together and seeing what we deliver there. And, if we're lucky, we'll also be able to drill Botapilus. And, for 2025, the main focus will be on that 2025 drill program down there. So I'd say keep an eye out for the results and see whether or not this team delivers. All
right, great. Well, I would like to thank Lauren Megaw for presenting today. And thank you everyone on the line for tuning in. Red Cloud's webinar series will continue tomorrow afternoon with Clean Air Metals presenting Thursday, November 14th at 2 p.m. Eastern Time. Have a great rest of your day and happy investing.